Welcome to another week of the Fantom Sports Top 25 alongside Alex Twist. I'm Owen Patterson. We're breaking down probably the biggest week in college football we're going to see. Week 4, a lot of great matchups, a lot of ranked matchups. Colorado and Clemson took huge losses. Florida State got a win. Oregon got a big win. There was also a good one between Alabama, Ole Miss, and Oregon State, Washington State. How'd you feel coming away from Week 4 with your picks?
Lived up to the hype. A lot of surprises for me though. Teams like Notre Dame and Oregon State were teams I expected to win today, but or last weekend, but they didn't come out on top. So we're gonna see a pretty big shakeup in our rankings.
Let's take a look at how those rankings look heading into Week 5. Mine are on the left. Alex's are on the right. A lot of new teams this week. Talk about your three that you added there.
Yeah, I got a bunch of new SEC teams in this area, and I was pretty impressed with Missouri and Kentucky as of late. Both of the teams have been known kind of for their defense in recent years, but offensively they've both been playing pretty well. Brady Cook from Missouri's got 7 touchdowns and 0 interceptions so far, and they've actually won their last 3 games by a single possession, so they're really living on the edge right now. And Kentucky, they had a big game. They have a big game this weekend against Florida, so one of those two teams will be falling out of my top 25 next week. And I'm not feeling too good about that game as a Florida fan because Kentucky's kind of had our number over the last few years.
Louisville got into my rankings. We talked about them, I think, 2 weeks ago. They were a bubble team for me. So their offense is explosive. They big plays all the time. So I threw Louisville in at number 21. I felt strongly about them last week, but I left them out in for Syracuse.
Yeah.
So they earned my respect by putting 56 on Boston College. So that's why they're up so high. Florida comes in the rankings a week later than their win against Tennessee. They benefit from the loss of Colorado and Iowa.
Yeah, they didn't do much to impress against Charlotte. It was
No.
not a great game, but they're sticking around for now. In Louisville, I wanted to mention them though. Louisville, they're a team that you've been really high on for a while, and they just didn't slow down offensively, so they're in my list too. And I wanted to give people an idea like how good their offense is. They rank 9th in points per game behind FSU and Miami, so they're competing with the best teams in the ACC right now. And they have 2 huge games next week against North Carolina State on the road, and then they host Notre Dame, so they have an opportunity to make a bunch of noise.
Then Clemson there at 24. You won't see them in a lot of rankings, but I've kept them around. Their 2 losses are 2 really good losses. Duke, I mean, although it was not very close, I think Week 1 can't hurt them too much in Week 1. But last week they led Florida State, or they were tied throughout the entire game. They just lost in overtime to a team that I have ranked number 1. So I won't hurt Clemson too much. I still think they're a really good team. And that's why I still have them in my top 25. Moving up into the top 20, here we see Ole Miss down there. They lost to Alabama this week. Any takeaways from that game? Did you see?
That was a pretty rough game for both teams, but it wasn't a terrible loss for Ole Miss, so they're not going to fall completely out of my top 25. Bama pretty much held on at home, but they didn't look very impressive either offensively again, so I don't have too much to write home about that game. But last weekend I did get my first look at Cam Ward on Washington State, and I was just so impressed by him. Because we're talking about an Oregon State defense they held every single team to a single touchdown up until that game. So they had 3 touchdowns allowed. And Cam Ward came in and threw 3 touchdowns in the first half. Finished with 400 yards, 4 touchdowns total, and had no interceptions. So the Beavers didn't really roll over. They kind of ran all over Washington State as well, but ultimately it wasn't enough. Their transfer quarterback from Clemson didn't really do well through the air, so I kind of like Washington State now. Their offense is really impressing.
Yeah, that game did raise a lot of concern for me about Oregon State. Just their defense. I know it's been so good early in the season, but they gave up 38 points to Washington State. So I dropped them all the way down to number 23. Washington State's a team that impressed me with their win over Wisconsin. I really like what they're doing there. I think they're a team that is slowly becoming a Pac-12 championship caliber team, right up there with Utah. So watch out for Washington State. You talked about Ward. He's an electric player, and that player too few people know.
Yeah, just another great QB in the Pac-12. I mean, it's crazy how loaded that conference is.
Syracuse, there at number 19. They were a team that got into my rankings last week. It's a team that I think still flies under the radar. I watched their game against Army. Um, they handled their triple option. Well, they don't even run the triple option anymore. They handled Army pretty well for a team that controls the ball for the entire game. Their defense is exceptional. I think that's the first thing I
Yeah.
noticed about Syracuse, and also their quarterback Garrett Schrader. He's a good running threat as well. So Syracuse is a team that I'm really hoping has a big week against Clemson this Saturday.
And I was talking about Louisville's scoring offense. Ahead of all three of them, Louisville, Florida State, and Miami, is Syracuse, 44.2 points per game. So they're doing it on offense and defense right now. It's kind of justified your ranking, to be honest. They're looking really, really good.
And to add to that scoring thing, those two of those games are against Colgate and Western Michigan, but I think they put up 50 in the first half against Colgate and 41 in the first half against Western Michigan. So
Yeah.
who knows how good that offense could be. 15 through 11, not too much changes here. Alabama's win clearly didn't affect their ranking
Yeah.
too much. They even dropped one spot in my rankings. Washington State ends up in the top 15 for you. And then there's Notre Dame, a team we've talked about all season, a team we really, really like. They lose a close game to Ohio State. You drop them 7 spots. What do you see in their loss to Ohio State?
Yeah, really thought that this was going to be Notre Dame's year, but who knows? That was a crazy ending to like a pretty sluggish game of football overall. The turning point for me though came late in the game. Notre Dame had possession of the ball with under like maybe 2 minutes left in the game, and it was 2nd and 15, and their coordinator called a screenplay. Almost resulted in a pick six, but it was incomplete. Stopped the clock and saved the Buckeyes from calling one of their timeouts. I'm not. I think they had two remaining. But they ended up using that timeout on their game-winning drive. So season may not be completely lost for Notre Dame yet because they play that ACC schedule, and the ACC is kind of impressing right now. So if they win out, they'll have some really quality wins over USC, Louisville, Duke, Clemson. So that could be enough for them to sneak back into the playoff if everything shakes out well for them.
Yeah, along with those ACC games, can't forget they still play USC as well.
Yeah.
Into the top 10 we go. Oregon got a win over Colorado, a 36-point win over Colorado. We didn't mention the Buffaloes. They both dropped out of our rankings, but I think we all understand why.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of touch on
Michigan at number 7. This is
Yeah, I was a bit surprised by Michigan, how they stayed at number 2. Haven't really done much to justify that, in my opinion, and they both fell to number 7 for us. We kind of agreed to take them out of our top 5. I didn't really think USC deserved to get dropped to number 8, even though they didn't have a great game against Arizona State. After watching last week's games, I'd honestly put Michigan slightly behind Ohio State and Penn State. They haven't really impressed us with any big wins like the other two just had last weekend. I mean, Penn State wiped the floor with Iowa, who was a ranked team. They're not ranked anymore, but they had an impressive win. And then Ohio State beat Notre Dame. So with Michigan, I'm still going to have to wait and see with them.
Yeah, all the teams above them, I guess except for Georgia, have all gotten a big win this season. They've played tough teams. They've beaten tough teams. And then you have Michigan, they've rolled over everybody, but their best opponent they played is Rutgers. So
Yeah.
Not to shame Rutgers at all, but they're not the same opponent as Notre Dame is.
Yeah. Rutgers came out swinging against them. I think they took like a 10-point lead, but Michigan was able to take care of business there. It's just, yeah, we're going to have to wait a while until they play a really quality opponent.
Mm-hmm. Into the top 5, Ohio State. In the top 4 for me, they're in the playoff picture. USC and Texas and Florida State. The Seminoles remain number 1, even though they played a close game against Clemson. And then there's Georgia at number 5, the team that, they've won all their games, they played. Same thing as why Michigan's at number 7.
Right.
Georgia does not have a big win yet, a ranked win. Neither does USC, but I think just the way they've played, the way they've beaten every team up this season, that's why they stay in the top 4. And Georgia is at number 5 until they beat somebody pretty good.
I can see that. And I knew that the winner of Ohio State Notre Dame was going to make my top 5, but I decided to have no movement in my top 4 because I didn't think Ohio State necessarily did enough to take out Texas, who's looked great, or FSU, who barely escaped Clemson. But I really like the way that the Noles fought on the road, and I think we probably saw the worst 2-week stretch from the Noles that we might be seeing all year. They're probably going to be favored in every single game for the rest of the season now, so that's why I kept Ohio State at 5.
All right. Big game in week 5, Notre Dame and Duke. I think that's one of the bigger ones. Obviously, USC and Colorado has lost a little bit of its glory, I guess,
Yeah.
with Colorado finally losing. Any predictions for that Notre Dame Duke game?
Is that Duke game? Are they hosting Notre Dame?
Yes.
Okay.
Game day's making its first appearance in Durham.
Oh, that's awesome. Right on. So I think Duke's got a shot. I really like the defense that they've shown, and Notre Dame really struggled offensively. We'll see if Sam Hartman and Estime are going to be able to bounce back for them. This is their chance to really just redeem themselves. Like I was saying, if they can win out, it has to start right now against a ranked ACC team. So I think for my prediction, I'll probably go Notre Dame to come out on top, but in a close one by 1 score.
I'll take Notre Dame as well. I think it's going to be low scoring, just like what we saw them
Yeah.
against Ohio State. I think Duke's defense is legit. They're going to give them a run at home, but Notre Dame, I think, is going to come out top.
Got a good Friday matchup as well. You got ranked 10 Utah at number 19 Oregon State. What are your thoughts on that game?
Is Rising coming back yet?
That's the big question, isn't it? He was questionable for last
Yeah,
week's
because if
game,
he's not
so
there-
yeah. Go on.
If he's not there against Oregon State, the Utah's not going to score any points. So I'm going to take the Beavers in that one.
Yep, I think it does completely hinge on Cam Rising coming back, and I think Cam Rising's going to make that his game to make his return. They're really running on thin ice right now because they're going to run the gauntlet in the Pac-12, and they're going to need their best player to come back sometime soon.
Circling all the way back to the bottom of our rankings, who was one team that just missed the cut for you this week?
Let's take a look here. So just missing the cut were both of the Kansas teams, Kansas and Kansas State. The Jayhawks have a huge game against Texas, so that'll be an interesting one to see. And then I left the Big Sky Fresno State team 4-0. They had a big win last week. They just missed my cut as well. How about you?
Yeah, Fresno State was my 26th ranked team. They have 2 Power 5 wins this year. They have a 43-point win over Kent State, but they have a game against Eastern Washington, and Eastern Washington took them to double overtime. So if Fresno State can beat Wyoming, puts them clearly in first place in the Mountain West, I think the Bulldogs enter the top 25. They did in the AP poll, but they're just outside of mine this week.
Yep, I could see them making it in if a few teams above them end up dropping out.
All right, well, that does it for our rankings this week. Hope you enjoy your week 5 of the college football season, and we'll be right back here next week evaluating what happened. So for Alex Twist, I'm Owen Patterson. Thanks so long. Until next week, this has been the Fantom Sports College Football Rankings.
See you next week.